and that is Dr. Anand Vinekar. And he won the AIOS Colonel Rangachari in 2018, professor and head of department of the Pediatric Retina Service at Narayana Nethralaya. And in India, he has founded the program and he's the director of Kid Drop program. So over to you, Anand, and we intend to hear from you lots of stories beyond what we have already known. Anand.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Partha, sir, the members of the AIOS, the collective leadership, and this opportunity to present, as everyone mentioned, on a very auspicious day. I'm here actually to present this, as Partha, sir, called it, my story. It's indeed a journey, and journey of 1,000 steps, 1,000 miles begins with a single step. I really want to start with the end, and the end is where this Rangachari presentation was made. It was in 2018, as sir mentioned. This is a title slide from that year's presentation. We were trying to report our initial experience of using tears that we were collecting of these babies during their first ROP screening, and try to predict whether these babies will eventually get the disease, and if so, what kind of disease. Why was it an important study? Because ROP is multifactorial. You can't predict the disease, especially if you're screening the baby for the first time. And we were hoping if we could do that non-invasively, then it would mean something in terms for the baby and for the society. We were, of course, looking for pro-angiogenic factors like VEGF, which we all intuitively know has some correlation, but also other factors. We found actually 20. We boiled them down to 10 in these 4 families. And then we looked at how these would play out with the kind of disease that these babies may eventually develop. No disease, some disease, or disease that required treatment. And you can imagine all this was being done with a single tear sample taken on the first time when the baby was undergoing screening. We could also initially predict what was going to happen in terms of the disease later, whether it was going to progress or regress. Yes, so it was non-invasive. We also not only detected the correlation of these angiogenic factors, but for the first time also brought out the role of inflammatory proteins. But a story has value only when you go back to see where it started. When I started my journey of ROP in PGI, as a very first year junior resident, we are all impressed upon how important and how prestigious the Colonel Rangachari Award is. And we are all made to aspire for it. As a final year junior resident, I was made to present what my mentor should have ideally done, and he probably would have won if he had presented it. But I presented Dr. Dogra's work on this unique model of how one can treat a sick baby, an incubator-dependent baby, through the wall. So these babies didn't have to become all right and less sick to be treated, but they could be treated while they were there themselves. Well, I was a final year JR, and even reaching the finals was bringing me goosebumps. I was not a ratified member. The AIOS, the Rangachari session was in the morning, and the GBM that ratified me was that evening. So yes, even technically I was not eligible for the award. But the winner that year is a legend, and he presented his lifetime work of congenital glaucoma, so there was no chance anyway. But what did I achieve despite the so-called loss? Well, firstly, I got an opportunity to look at all these giants of our field. And my mentor, who should have ideally presented it, won the Hanumant Reddy Award, because to reach the finals, one has to be the best paper of one session. And that year, the Hanumant Reddy Award for best pediatric paper was instituted, which he won. Of course, this went on to become a very important paper, which has been cited over 100 times now and is also used so clinically. 2 years later, I was a senior resident in PGI, and now I was defending my thesis. I was presenting my thesis where we were actually challenging for the first time the Western screening guidelines. We were saying that if you emulate the American or the British guidelines, you would miss up to 15 to 23% of babies who may develop the disease and even severe disease. We were also looking at these heavier babies, so to speak, more than 1,500 grams, and finding out unique risk factors in them. Again, I reached the finals. And this time I was ratified. Just a year before that, in 2004, my own teacher, Dr. Vishali Gupta, had won the award. And of course, I didn't win. But then, look at the name who won that year, again, for his outstanding contribution throughout his career. Again, what did I achieve despite the so-called loss? Well, since it was my PG presentation, that year at ARC, I won the best thesis. It also went on to become a very, very important IGO publication, one of the most cited papers in IGO even till today. I think as of last month, it had crossed over 220 citations. More importantly, in India, for the first time, the national guidelines took cognizance of this paper and said that we have to deviate from the Western guidelines and start making our own guidelines. And that's how 1750 and 2000 grams came into the national guidelines. And today it's so concrete. My third and fourth attempt were 12 years later. By this time, I'd finished my fellowship with Dr. Mike Treacy. What a beautiful coincidence that today's IGO cover article had to have him on it. So, and on Guru Purnima. So, after I came back, we started at Narayana Nethralaya what would have become, what is actually the India's first telemedicine program to serve in the rural areas. Why telemedicine? Well, the need was obvious. We have such few specialists and millions of babies to screen, all in the rural areas. We were trying to replace the so-called ROP specialist who uses an indirect with a camera. We trained and validated tons of technicians, and it took us almost 7 years to make that first publication on validating the telemedicine model. We even started doing treatment in the outreach, and we had to take bus journeys to travel about 600 kilometers to do that treatment. What started off in 3 NICUs is currently in 127 NICUs across the state. Over 3,000 babies have been treated, and we are just going to reach the 2 lakh babies this probably by the end of the month. But we knew that to make this, to expand this program pan-India and pan across middle-income countries, we had to come up with a low-cost camera. The work literally started with a thermocol protocol and then went on to make a prototype, which is what I presented in 2017 as the PI of this study. We had worked with Department of Biotechnology and IIT Chennai. It was the camera that was going to fit into a suitcase with 2 new international patents without any reverse engineering, and the economic benefits were tremendous. We reduced the cost of the camera, the capex, over 6 times, and the recurrent cost by almost 5 times. So was it going to be the 3rd time lucky? No, it wasn't. Another paper, however, from my own institute won. It was Institute Pride over personal.
1 minute left.
Natasha is going to be presenting that, and I think it highlighted our Grow Lab work. What did I achieve? Well, it was a paper that has now become a benchmark for all low-cost cameras. And to a surprise, we were awarded by Government of India the Innovator of the Year award. Getting back to that Coimbatore paper, which eventually won it, it was not just the fact that we took translational medicine, taking tears, putting it into our own lab, analyzing it, and making it and telling the world about the impact, but also that we took it to the social impact, where we were trying to invent, and this is now work in progress, where these babies in these rural areas are going to be tested during their screening, and we are able to predict which of these babies need to come back for a quicker follow-up. Imagine the impact. 3.5 million babies need almost 17 million exams. If we are able to predict which of these might actually develop disease and
1
when,
minute left.
you might be able to reduce their number of sessions by 1/3 or even half. And yes, the award did happen, and receiving it from a Nobel laureate that year, who his lifetime work has been in child labor and child education, was even more special. That year was also a double whammy, winning the Innovator of the Year for our laser simulator in the ARC. So what did I learn from this journey? You can never work alone. You have to work with a team, in our case, in both industry and the lab and so on. Own your work, take ownership of the work, make it yours. Don't present somebody else's work. However good you think you are, when you are on that stage for the finals, you will get goosebumps. So practice this presentation. I did it more than 30 times before I walked up on that stage in the finals. You never lose, you only learn. And if you really, really want something, never give up. And if you don't give up, you will get it. Most importantly, be humble in victory and gracious in defeat. For all of us like Ale who work in the field of ROP, there can be no end. Well, as long as there are babies to be treated and blindness to be prevented, there'll always be a work cut out and miles to go before we sleep. On Guru Purnima, I'd really like to thank all my teachers, mentors, seniors, and friends, and all our collaborators who've been with us through all these years. Thank you.
Anand, what a story. What a story. Thank you so much. Thank you. So, Lalit sir.
The only thing I would say, winners are restless. People think that Anand has got all the facility and he will and he's hardworking and this thing. But you see, he has been trying, trying, and trying. So, lesson to be learned for everybody, all the listeners, because the scientific team led by Partho has devices primarily to motivate others. And you see, today the people who are listening, they are fortunate to listen to the story. And I'm sure this will be available, Partho, in the YouTube for some time.
Yes, sir.
And it should be available at your site for some time. Because for all the youngsters or even people like us to learn is first attempt, second attempt, third attempt. Don't lose your heart. Because I remember the Office of Chairman Scientific Committee, when Anand's paper was declared as a session best paper, he grew more excited. And he was taking rounds of that office. Sir, presentation Vineekar, nahi Anand, your presentation is definitely there. And he then went on to, I remember Anand, that scene, and because he had that belief, you see, fourth attempt, still not giving up, still not giving up. And today, you see, where has this project reached? Kids ROP project, and in entire country is Anand proud of you. And I know that Mangat Dogra, when he project he presented with that incubator wall laser, that itself was a landmark project. But he, waited and waited, and he has been very kind enough. He has been very humble to say all these three winners, namely Natasha, Sanwan, or Mandal, they were all worthy winners. But still, he kept working hard and hard. So I would say, winners are not restless. Winners don't rest at all. Winners are, and they're always humble, like Anand is. Very humble human being, and very grateful to the entire team. So that those are the qualities, apart from hard work, research, all the facilities there, but these qualities also, make them the winners. So hats off to you, Anand.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Big mind.
Fairuz, you are the next discussant for Anand.
Yeah, so I know Anand very personally, and I know how much of hard work he puts in his, area of interest. And what I really appreciate and like about Anand is the focus that he has. And we have seen it right from the junior residency. It has been ROP, and I think he walks ROP, he talks ROP, and he thinks ROP always. And the humongous work that he has done, and there are so many residents and fellows that I know has been inspired so much by his work and the meticulous work. And another thing that I really like about Anand is his consistency, and that I'm sure has made what he is today. So, well, it's very inspiring. And I think the entire young generation, not only young generation, anyone who's aspiring to, do their presentation and should take this example from all the presenters today, of course, but well, and I also take a lot of inspiration from him personally. So that's what
So Anand said about practice. And I still remember Anand, just before he was going to present for the apple tree contest, the slide that he showed, the picture that he showed, he was still practicing during the session before his talk. So a person like Anand, if he has to practice his talk, which means that all of us, before our session, we need to practice as hard. And then comes that beautiful oration that wins an award. Great.
Thank you, Anand, and
Thank you,
great
sir.
job.
Thank you, sir.
We all need to clap for him.
Absolutely.
Yes.